David Bowie to start your morning off. And if you weren't dancing, I don't know why not. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. My name is Cameron Grant. I'm the Senior Policy Analyst for the Timmins Chamber. Please join me in taking a brief moment to reflect and recognize the traditional lands which we find ourselves on this morning. I come to you from the lands of the Matagami and Matachwan First Nation here in the Treaty 9 territory. It's important that as leaders in our community, we recognize and commit to economic reconciliation. Under the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions of Canada's calls to action number 92, it states that the corporate sector in Canada should adopt the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a reconciliation framework and apply its principles and norms to corporate policy and core operational activities involving Indigenous peoples and their lands and resources. I encourage you all to read the TRC's calls to action and understand your role in reconciliation as well. How have you promoted or committed to your region's treaty rights today? Or if you are on unceded territory or unsurrendered territory, how best can you promote their economic prosperity? I invite you to join me in reflecting upon those questions today. Welcome everyone to our session entitled Leading Change in the Workplace with our very own Keitha Robson, CAO of the Timmins Chamber here. I do want to take a brief moment to acknowledge that the Cochrane District is one of the few regions, and I know that there are some joining across the 32 Northern Chambers of Commerce today, but to provide some insight here in the Cochrane District, is one of the few regions in the province that continues to cite negative population growth. Under the Reimagine Resiliency pillar, this series will explore how attraction and retention campaigns can seek to grow a highly skilled and viable workforce through migration and incentive initiatives. Understanding what employment-related policies are needed to increase retention and develop highly attractive workplaces can be explored through these modules, workshops, and sessions, particularly the leading change in your workplace, which we'll hear from Keitha today. I do want to say that I'm extremely grateful for the support of the Far Northeast Training Board and want to thank Julie Jonca and her team for supporting the workforce development pillar under our Reimagine Resiliency brand. I don't have a bio for Keitha, but I believe her reputation precedes her, so I certainly won't speak for her. But needless to say, I will outline a few things that you can hope to hear about today. Basically, we'll be exploring the process of change, how to prepare for change, and how knowing how the right steps can ease the transition, and how change creates anxiety in a workplace, don't we know that, and ways to reduce that anxiety through change management principles. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Ms. Keitha.
Good morning, everyone. Now Keitha has to figure out how to share her screen again. So one second. I'll do a little musical interlude for you as well while I do it.
I think we appreciate that, yeah.
There you go. Perfect. I can't see anything anymore because of my view of my screen. So I'm going back this way. And now
the magic is brewing, it's building. I can feel it.
It's down here now. Perfect. Okay, there we go. Can we see this?
Just swap it into presentation mode and you should.
There we go.
Beautiful, look at that.
All right, we're ready to go. So Zoom, there's a change. All right, okay, so good morning, everyone. As Cameron said, I am Keitha Robson, the CAO of the Chamber, and I am a change management practitioner, and that's a new thing for me. So this presentation is actually part of my learnings from my designation. So I wanted to share with you what I've learned so far on my change journey, and it's definitely not over, but I now feel that I have some tools, and that's what I wanted to share with all of you today. So we were just having a quick discussion before we started, and my team asked me, well, what's the significance of this lovely creature here? And I said, well, this is who I would be if I weren't me, really, because they're a little bit fun and edgy, can do makeup on point. I'm not very good with the makeup wand. I love the colorful hair. We know that about me, but I'm not exactly into the blue, but I may. And I feel like they could maybe ski or snowboard, and I don't have any core strength or balance left at this age to achieve that goal anymore. So really, this may be who I would change into if I could. But my reason for using this image is really, when I started my career, there's no way that our workplace would have hired someone that looked like that. And we totally would today. I would love, to have this amount of self-expression on our team. We've had employees with colored hair for sure, besides just red. So, that's what I want you to think, that we've gone through change, whether we've known it or not. But, I used to do a lot of hiring when we operated a license bureau, and face tattoos were a no-no from the ministry. And yet I find these ones kind of lovely now, right? So we're just become conditioned to some change that we see. So I just want you to keep that in your mind as we go throughout the session. So who likes change? Probably 0 people. And we can all say, oh, I love change. I love it. Well, when we experience it, we don't usually love it. We get to the road that's closed. We say, why didn't they tell us? We get a flight that's delayed. Oh, it's ruining my vacation. We have daylight savings time and we all moan about it for weeks because it's, lighter, darker, all of these things. So we don't really, as human beings, like change. So the sooner we get comfortable with that fact, the better off we'll probably all be. So, when my flight gets delayed, do I just say, oh, no, that's okay, I'll have an opportunity to read a book? No, I'm still upset. I want to go on my holiday. But, we could look at it the other way of, I now have an opportunity to do something else. Most people don't want the opportunity to stay in the airport for extra time. I understand. So if you're here because you like change, I want you to really look at how much you really like it. So here's a few reasons why people fear change. So, it's what about me, right? Will I be neglected? Will I be obsolete? Am I relevant anymore? What's going to happen? Why don't I know, right? It's the same reason when we watch a movie and we don't know what's coming up, there's a suspense. Well, the good news is in a movie, you're going to find out. At work, you don't necessarily have that same advantage. You can't fast forward to the part where you get to know. So really, what is going to happen is the most anxiety-causing condition in our workplace, right? So that's why your team will really fear change and why you fear doing it. All right, so there I am. I'm the CAO of the Timmins Chamber. I will be there for 25 years in June. Does that sound like someone who likes change? Probably not. I actually remember getting the internet in our office in 1999. So, and that was a big change. And the board of the day, I had a bit of a back and forth with them on it because it was a bit expensive at the time. And they said, I think it's going to be a fad. I don't think people will really use it. So look at us now, 25 years later, 24 years later, using the internet for sessions just like this. So I've seen a lot of change. We don't have a fax machine anymore. We used to live by the fax machine, just faxing things to everyone. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples throughout this session on, how we use the change, or how I use the change steps to get us to different decisions. So why change management? Well, 2020 was a kicker. Everything changed, right? So our work changed, where we worked, our family changed. We couldn't see them. I couldn't see my grandkids. Very sad. I wanted to keep them safe. So very sad about all of these things. We couldn't socialize with our friends the same way. I had my friends playing, games with us on this new thing called Zoom that we found. Just to stay in touch. Our activities changed, our food, our drink changed, right? We couldn't even get things at the grocery store. So we had to change maybe, what we were having for dinner, because it wasn't just as easy to go to the grocery store. And our environment changed. So, the places where we were totally changed. And there were a couple of ways to deal with that. And not everyone recovered from 2020 and the amount of change in it as well as others. And I believe that the steps of change management really helped me a little bit come back out of that fog, if you will. So Charles Darwin, it's not the strongest or most intelligent who will survive, but those who can best manage change. I never think I'm the smartest person in the room, nor do I think the strongest, but I do want to build my resiliency or my ability to manage change. And that was the reason for my change management practitioner. So I thought before 2020 that I was pretty good at, maneuvering things and that I could handle change no problem. I'm usually an innovator. I'm usually the first one to say, like, let's kind of think about this. I had read John Cotter before. I had read Our Iceberg is Melting, because chambers and organizations definitely see the need to change and be relevant to their members continuously. So I, tried to stay up. I had read Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. And these were like easy reads that I thought, well, there must be more to it than this, because these seem like things that, everyone would be doing. It wasn't until I tried to do it that I realized it was a little more difficult in application. So I want to talk to you a little bit. I want to give you some examples. So we had a change and we had a project. And for those of you that are familiar with our chamber, we owned this beautiful historic building in Schumacher since 1990. So even before me, there were a lot of great reasons that we went into that building in the first place. We had a lot of partners. We had the James Bay Frontier at one point. We had a license bureau. We had the Timmins Construction Association. So there were a number of partners that came together to acquire that building. And through 2020, we weren't in that building. And we really had been having a conversation since 2012 about if the building still served our membership. We had some accessibility issues in the building. We had, a list of pros and cons of why we loved this historic building, but at the same time, now we weren't using it. And we wanted to evolve our chamber, as we had now learned to do online, to provide more services. And I want to tell you that the true discussion in 2021 on, getting down to the, well, we're really going to do it conversation had me very, very anxious. And I was a champion. I thought it was a great idea to move on from this building. However, I had come to work here every day for 24 years at that point, 23 years. I was very comfortable. It felt like home. We were very snug as a unit. And all of these things were those same problems that we heard over and over when we tried to talk about the physical space that we were in. But at the same time, they were, I was probably in our team the most resistant to the thought of the change, even though I had to be the change champion. So I was like, how do I go about feeling okay about this decision and encouraging our board, our team, our members, and our community that this was going to be okay, and that our beautiful Raven will be taken care of. So what did I do? I got to work. I said, I need some mindset about how to go about this. So that is when I looked into my change management practitioner course. I wanted to do the coursework, and I wanted to use our upcoming sale thought as my project during my course. So I had a great plan of how we were going to go about this by the time I was had achieved my change management practitioner certification. So I did it through APMG. You can do it online. I'm not here to sell the course. I'm just here to tell you there are resources available to you, and there's very many change management styles and practices. So find one that works for you. I want to mention that change leadership. So this session is leading your workforce through change is different than change management. So as leaders, you have to look at whether you're up for the task to commit to change. So some of the first questions I had to ask myself were, am I able to collaborate? Am I able to communicate? And can I commit? So if I had to be comfortable with my project before I could make others comfortable with the project. So I had to go through my 3 C's to make sure that I could actually enter into the Cotter 8 steps, which is the change management process that I use. However, those 3 C's, you have to dig a little bit deep into yourself as a leader and understand that sometimes you're going to have your mind change for you. You have to be open to that. So I had to say, well, what if this doesn't go my way, right? How will I be comfortable with the non-change if it doesn't happen? So all that to say, it seems to be working out so far, and we're not done. So why is change important in an organization? I don't think you would be here if you didn't think that there's change needed or change happening, right? So our customer needs are constantly evolving. We have this ever-changing world of technology that, we do our best to try and keep up with. I went from no internet to all internet. We have this changing global economy. So, there was a discussion the other day about the price of natural gas, and then we were talking about the war in Ukraine. So, I mean, you have to understand how one thing impacts another and how that might change things for your organization to take advantage of growth opportunities. So sometimes it's just a good time. Challenging the status quo. Do you want to stay the same? Is the same working? And then is there a culture of innovation? So if we want to have an organization that kind of naturally evolves, we have to get to a culture of innovation. And I'm sure my friends from the Link North would agree with me on that one. All right, and the organizational change iceberg. So here's what I want to point out to you. So when we think about what we know about an organization, we can see what their strategy is, maybe how they're formed, their structures. We hope to see their vision. We hope to see their shared values. But what we sometimes don't see, but does exist, are what they believe in, the tradition. That was a big one for me. Way down the bottom, you see this thing called feelings. Definitely something we need to deal with in change management. There's unwritten rules, like we do that because we do that. The stories, the norms, the perceptions are shared assumptions, right? So why was the chamber in that building in Schumacher? We assume someone had a good reason for it at the time, right? And we did, because it was in the center of the city, had good access to trails, had good access, but that's when we were a tourist information center. So there are factors always at play. There's driving forces and there's restraining forces. So there are reasons why you're going to do something and reasons why you're not going to do something. And those are internal and external. And there are positive and they are negative. And this is one of the things you need to figure out with any change is, what's my current situation? Why does it want to change? What change do I need to make that I think would be for the better? What's stopping me from making that change? And are they positive or negative? And can I use them in my change initiative? So if you want to get out of your current situation, you definitely have to figure out what your forces at play are. And sometimes we don't think we need change, and all of a sudden it's going to pop up today that there's definitely a change needed. So here's some of the detailed steps, the basics of change management. So again, you're going to figure out what your current situation is, and you have to identify that. So you need to know why do we want to change, right? What's your why? Simon Sinek has not made millions of dollars and sold millions of books because of this thing called why. It's really important. You have to know the why of what you're doing. And it sounds so basic, but it can be like, well, we're going to sell a building. Well, why? Okay, like getting into that conversation was a lot more difficult, for our volunteers as well as for our team. And then we have to also be able to answer the why not. And who's ready for change? As I said, are you working with a bunch of people who say they like change or who have demonstrated that they are change makers? That's also important. I'm fortunate that I work with a team and a board of directors that are very good at doing research, but also very good at accepting or recommending if we're ready for a major change. And I think we're only getting better at that because we've started making changes. What's going to get impacted? Where are the gaps? Let's have some feedback. Everybody gets to have their say. Then you're going to plan and launch your program, and then you're going to have, a change of infrastructure. Maybe in our case, it was a yes. You have to communicate plans. You have to launch the idea, monitor the change, and then you have to figure out, oh, there's been resistance to the change. You have to see if people are behaving differently. So we're monitoring that. Even in our new, everybody wants to know, do you like your new office, right? Because that's people trying to assess behavioral change. So what we do as human beings kind of naturally with each other, the way we communicate tends to be in these steps of change management. It's, we want to know how people are doing. We get to the assessment part. We try to support them if there's, something that is not working out for them. And then again, evaluating the effectiveness. So what are the results? Let's share our success stories, provide that support, and reward and recognize everyone for, we did it, we got through it. So definitely, I'll tell you about the steps I'm not as good at, but definitely we need to celebrate as we go along. So these are the 8 steps, or how to be strategic, according to John Cotter, who's a change management scientist. He is featured heavily in my Change Manager's Handbook. And this approach to change was probably the easiest for me to wrap my head around. And these 8 steps are now something I keep a 1 to 8 list on my desk. And if we talk about a change, I start filling in the 1 to 8 just so that I can have some steps and people, I'll get to it. But so again, you need to establish a sense of urgency. You need to create your group that's going to help you. You need to have a vision and a strategy. We need to communicate that change. We need to empower our employees. We need to generate some short-term wins. We need to group together our gains and produce more change. If we're already in the method or the mode of changing, can we do other changes? And then we need to anchor those approaches. So we need to make sure we're not going to go back on our word. So I'm going to just hit on each one of these steps as I saw it from our building experience. And then I'm going to share with you maybe how you would do it with other experiences, just because I'm also going through another change right now that I can use as an example. So, all right, there are other models. So there's Lewin. His is to unfreeze, transition. So like stop doing that, motivate employees to do something different, make the change, and then freeze them in time again, or refreeze to enforce that new guideline, ensuring. Again, each change management model is a little bit different. This is the unfreeze, transition, refreeze. There's also the ADKAR model, which is create awareness, create desire, impart some knowledge, trainability, and then provide reinforcement. And I think you would see that some of these would work in better change situations than others. This one tends to be more about individuals. So this one for me would probably work a little bit better with, working with a team member to make a change. And then there's the PDCA change management model, which is pretty simple, of plan, do, check, and act. So you can see the steps in each of these, but we're all doing this all the time. It's whether you think you have a plan. So to me, change management is really about that. Is we're practicing change management all the time. We're just maybe not doing it in the right steps. We're not completing all the steps, or we don't know that there are steps. So this is really my way of keeping track that I've maybe taken the change as far as I can take it by completing all the steps and trying to do them in order. Sometimes they don't fall in order, but we'll talk about that. So let's go back to Cotter for those of you that are of an age, you'll know that this is not John Cotter, but anyway, there we go. Okay, so why was there, what could we use for an urgency to sell our building? Well, we had forces at work. Again, we had COVID. We weren't in our building. We weren't able to look after it. We had a good market for commercial buildings. It was, a good time to sell a building if our board was serious about that. So all of a sudden, our discussion from 2012, which I think was the first time we talked about it, but I mean, serious discussions probably since 2018. And, this just happened to create more of an urgency because it was like, the market might be right. We may be able to find a good owner, and the forces that we are all working from home and kind of no longer in need of that particular space, and that we were going to probably have to work a little bit differently when we came back to a space. So all of a sudden there was some urgency. And you can see that you can do change planned or unplanned. Both start off on a negative curve. The difference is you will accelerate your change more quickly if you actually plan the change. So we could have just kept wandering on, and somebody would have walked over and said, hey, we'd like to buy your building. Maybe that would have happened. But that would have been an unplanned change. The fact that we made that decision and we put us into a curve of a planned change, and therefore we managed our change a lot faster, because we weren't sitting around waiting for someone to walk over and ask to buy our building, as well as we had to put our other plans in place. So all of that kept us out of the negative area of change a lot faster. So anyway, that's why you want it to be planned, because we all go through unplanned change all the time. When we hit a road that's closed, unplanned change. That's why we stay negative a little bit longer. And there's going to be resistance to change. So how do we overcome that? Well, it's the same way we overcome resistance to change with our spouses or our children or our friends, or, it's education and communication. It's asking them to participate and be involved. It's facilitation and support. It's negotiation. We've all negotiated with, someone. Sometimes it's a little bit of manipulation, and sometimes it's even coercion, right? We have to get serious about it. Like if you're going to be resistant for no reason that I can understand or that you can communicate to me, I'm going to coerce you through this change, which is probably not the best method, which is why it's last. However, we want to make sure that we are using something from each of these boxes in order to overcome the resistance that's going to pop up. Because the minute we started talking about, actually selling our building, there were those who are very against, and there are those that are very for, and then a lot of people in the middle, which will explain this. So people enroll for things, for change, and just like technology or anything else, you've probably seen the same type of curve that exists with early adopters, the person that needs the very newest iPhone all the time, early adopters before they find out if it has bugs, or, well, it's the same thing in change management. So you need to understand you're going to have early enrollers, you're going to have the people that have initiated the change. You're also going to have these diehards and slugs, they call them. I'm just like, I don't know if we could come up with a better name than slugs, but I get they're slow. They're a little bit, so you can't spend too much time over there. You have to hope that your change vision will encourage them to move along and come up, maybe just be late enrollers instead of diehards and slugs. But you'll always have those who are against change. I'm sure we still have those who are against the changes that we've made. Fortunately, I think most of our members are seeing that we are now better equipped to serve them. So this enrollment curve exists. You need to understand that not everybody is going to be at the same point. Again, I was an initiator by having the discussion, but I was probably a late enroller because I was hesitant in some areas of how we would manage the change. So guiding coalition, step 2, you have to build the team or the folks that are going to help you with the change. So we had, as I said, some board champions, but we also had some staff champions. And people will say, well, we have a very small team and we can't have a guiding coalition. Sometimes a guiding coalition is right here. So sometimes it is one, sometimes it's half a person, honestly. So, but sometimes it's also external folks that can help you. So I want you to think about, you know, people will say, oh, if I have to build a guiding coalition for every change I make, sometimes you are the guiding coalition, and that's okay. But in my case, as an organization, we work with the board of directors and other volunteers. So we utilize those skill sets as well. So that's a benefit that we have. But staff champions are key. And as I said, I was an initiator. However, a bit of a late enroller, but what I communicated with my team was that they had been telling me this all along. Every staff meeting that we had and had a discussion about, we could do this if we had that, or we could do this if we had, you know, we were seeing that the physical limitations of the building. So the staff were actually the champions before I became the initiator, because I had that data from them, whether they knew that that's what it was going to be used for or not. So vision and strategy in NE. So step 3, what are we changing and why? Why are we changing it? And there's 4 types of change that most workplaces will see. So you're either going to have some sort of technology work, some sort of change. And those are usually, is Paul on this call? I hope not. Anyway, so those are usually the ones we fear the most, right? Because no, what if my computer goes down? What if the system doesn't work? So, you know, technology changes are very stressful for people. But why do we need to change? As long as people will understand that there's a benefit to the other side. We change for our physical setting, which was the example that I'm using right now. Our structure, so our organization, sometimes we're downsizing a board, or sometimes we are changing a position, or then we get into, or we're changing people, right? So sometimes someone's leaving, someone's coming, all of those things. In your vision and strategy, you need to build in some time to allow for people to deal with their feelings of loss. So all change will invoke a feeling of loss of something, right? So I had clearly a feeling of loss of my work home, and I had to work through that. So some days that was by not going to the space because it would make me sad to be there, or some days it was, you know, sitting down with the designs of the new space that we were going to be in and saying, oh, this is going to be so much nicer, right? So I had to have that time in the vision and strategy to allow people to deal with their loss of feelings. So I want you to remember that for the next example that's not the building. And then, of course, setting goals together. So we had many conversations about when this would happen, when that would happen, and or when we hoped things would happen. This was our vision and strategy, but as we went along, those goals definitely changed. And then we had to communicate the vision. So again, in person where possible. These were not the years for always being able to meet in person. So we did do a lot of this type of communication, but always trying to take into account that we need, what will be the behavior? How do we feel about it? What are the effects of it? And what are the needs of the organization? So that is where we got to clear communication. Like, we're all on board because, and we're going to be able to do this because. So that really was important in communicating our vision, not only to our team and with our board, but with our designer or with our real estate agent, or so they all needed to understand our why, and very clearly. And when we would think of change announcements, we're trying to think of, What's the specific change? What's the reason? How is it going to impact us? What will the benefits be? Are there drawbacks, which is usually costs? What we know and what we don't know, because we don't know what we don't know. And when we will get back to you with more information. So if you're going to make a big change, these are contents that you should have in your discussions, because these are what people want to know. This is like getting to the part of the movie, right? So when we'll be back after these messages, we'll be right back. And that's what people want to know. So empowering employees. So this is Liz. And if you don't know Liz, Liz is our office administration and special projects. And we considered this change to be a special project. Lucky Liz. So why was that so important? Well, because I clearly had additional connections. I had moving into the late adopter phase feelings. So Liz was our newest team member. She joined us in September of 2021. And we made the decision to sell the building officially in November of 2021. So she was brand new. She had no attachment to the space. She had worked in it for a few months and thought what didn't work was probably more her annoyance than anything else. You know, she would like this or she would like that. And Liz was our frontline person. So she became, and you know, we really as an organization handed over this change. I, as the management of this organization, handed over this change to Liz and said, let's talk about the goals and let's talk about how we're going to get there. And Liz was a dynamo, and she, you know, saved my mental health for sure in getting through this process. She and I went back and forth quite a bit on various feedback. The entire team was in place with, okay, we can do this, we can do that. We were all pushed out of our comfort zones. Things started to leave our offices. We were cleansing. There was a lot of change going on. And then we started, well, what would our new home, where would our new home be? And as we went out to look, I actually would take the entire team with me. And some people thought that was a little bit too much. But I found for myself as well as for them that it was reducing the anxiety of trying to, you know, not knowing where they might go or not having any feedback on where they might go. So to me, those site visits really helped reduce our resistance to the change that was happening. And as you can see here, 70% of change programs fail because of the people. I didn't want to put people someplace that they were going to hate going to work. And people are the greatest source of that resistance. So we involved the people. We sometimes even brought a board member to the executive, looked at our plans for the new office. They approved those things. So it was really let's have a look and make sure that this is really going to work for everyone. And Liz was selling things on Facebook Marketplace, old filing cabinets, and she was having a great time. Well, I thought she was having a great time. She may tell me different. But I mean, we were really cleansing, and that part started to feel good. So we were celebrating those short-term wins. We were, you know, take the $20 and put it in an envelope. We had a count on how much money we were generating from the Facebook Marketplace sales of random things that we had managed to collect in the basement of that building for years and years. So we really celebrated. So when we got to this step, it was kind of easy. And then because we were making this big change of a building, well, we started talking about, well, what are we going to put in the building? Like the new space, what are we going to, how's it going to look? So we started talking about new technology, and we started talking about like new phones, new furniture, so literally when we moved from Schumacher, we had almost zero amount of things other than what was in our storage space that were required for events and things. And it was kind of the newness of all, because we had started on that journey of, well, if we're going to make one change, we have to finish off with these other changes. So other changes started to evolve out of our process, which was scary, but each change had a plan. When we consolidated our gains and look for those more change. So we do have to be careful of a few things. You have to watch for signs of personal or organizational resistance. So you'll notice that as human beings, when we're in a hurry, that's when everybody's driving really slow in front of us, right? Or we'll drop things, or we have little accidents, or we hurt ourselves when we're doing something because we're in a hurry. So we want to make sure that those consolidations that are going to get us more change are not done too quickly. And as we looked through all the facets of our operation, as we moved, we had more changes and more suggestions and do things differently. And I think we're now in a real state of change innovation. And I think our volunteers support that as well, because they are like, how can we make it better for the people that we work for and the people that we work with? And that is our membership and our team. So our volunteers have a much more comfortable space. Our community has a much more comfortable space that they can use. We want people to be in and using our space. And we never had that feeling in our old building. It was just more functional versus things that we wanted to share. So I think that's really where our change motivation is now coming from. And then your final step is anchoring those new approaches in the culture. So people will revert. We go back to our old ways, right? So I had a box from my old office in the basement. I brought it up. I wanted to put it on the same places that it's always gone, right? We will revert to our old habits. So we need to make sure that we watch the change. So this is the stage that we are currently in when it comes to the new space. And we need to get people through the denial. How? Well, we need to inform them. We need to get through resistance by listening and acknowledging and responding. Exploration. So how do we set priorities, short-term goals, training, in order to get to that commitment, which is really our long-term goal, right? So when can we say, this is how your chamber acts, or this is how your workplace acts? When can we get to that point? So, that's with team building and rewards. And I always try and remember the RLBL, because it's, what is the reaction? How can we learn or teach something? How will we change the behavior? And then what are the results that we will get? So I try and look at the RLBL of each change that we're trying to entrench in our organization. So those are just things that have helped me through those 8 stages. So we are anchoring our new approaches in our culture. As I mentioned, we now have this new boardroom space that we're very proud of, that our volunteers had a hand in designing and equipping and making sure it had great technology and all of those things. So we're now able to share that with the community, and we want to do that with our members as well. So this is how part of our new culture is. Come and see us, come visit with us, come use this space, because it is your space as well. And our past culture may have been more of one, drop over if you need to, but we know there's a lot of stairs. So this building is accessible, which we're very proud of. So the question is, those were my 8 steps through that one change. And there were other changes out of that, subsequent changes from the decision to sell the building. But can the 8 steps be used for any organizational or any workplace change? Yes, absolutely. Right now, your resistance is telling you, I don't think I have time for 8 steps in every change, but you're probably already doing them. And each step has a different speed. So I don't want you to think each step is taking months and we're going to be so slow we can't make any decisions. I would think as an organization, my famous line is, let me sleep on it, which is usually more of, I need to work it through the plan, right? So, but we're pretty quick to look for opportunities to change. So I wouldn't say that the 8 steps slow us down. If anything, they make sure that we're able to finish the change. and not revert. So a lot of people make a change and they don't get to the final 8th step of making sure that it's entrenched. And then we start to see that they revert to their old ways. So we do that personally, and we do that in our workplace as well. All right, so back to those 8 steps. There they are if you haven't already written them down. No, I'm teasing you. You'll probably get these slides or if you need them. So if you can just Google John Kotter 8 steps and you'll see them. So I wanted to give you another example of how I would apply this maybe if I have to hire somebody in a workplace. So, and this, just so happens to maybe happening with us right now. So hiring in our organization is a big deal. We are a very small team and we need top talent, and I know you all do as well. You can have, various reasons of why you need to do that, but step 1, right? So, it's shown up that I need to hire somebody. So step 1, are there threats? Like how does this impact us? That's my first question. What's the scenarios? What will need to change? Are there opportunities? So, and these are all the questions that I would, well, not all, but these are some of the questions that I would ask myself under each of these steps to any change. This one happens to be if I need to hire someone. So if there's an opportunity, my first, maybe physical task is around a job description review, right? Do we still need the same thing done? Because every change is an opportunity for growth or bigger change. So, right, you find out, oh, I need to hire somebody. You have this urgency, do the job description review, gives you time to think of what you need them to do for your organization. You have to have some honest discussions with others. So some exit interview feedback, some colleague feedback. What does everyone else think we need this position to do? So what does this person that's leaving or this person that doesn't exist yet, what will they think they need to do? And then we look at support from outside customers, outside stakeholders, industry peers to strengthen our argument, right? So very many industry associations or Stats Canada even, have information on wage and position types. Sorry, excuse me. And, you can get information that would support, here's the type of position we need and why we need it. So when I say create urgency, all of a sudden we have a need for a person. Then my powerful coalition. So sometimes that coalition is me. I'm the person that hires at our organization. But if it's a technical position, do I have that technical talent? So sometimes maybe I would, need to call somebody that would tell me information about the type of employee that I would need. I need to ask for emotional commitment from these key people. So my coalition is always my team. So I need enthusiastic support. We're going to make a change, and here's what we need to do, why we need to do it, and is this the position that we need to do? So that's the team building, communicating why it's important, share information as it becomes available. So, if it's okay to be shared, we can share letters of resignation, we can share reasons for change, we can share the reason why we think we need a new position, all of these, whatever your reason is for hiring. And then check your team for weak areas. So, and what I mean by that is whenever there is a hiring change, someone's going to get impacted on your team. If there are other members on your team, that person may be you. And so who's going to be impacted the most? And sometimes you need to include the person, the vacancy, and whether that has a person in it or not, but the position. But could your person that's leaving also be an advocate on your powerful coalition? So sometimes people leave for, good reasons as well as bad reasons. So sometimes it's not possible, sometimes it is. So those are all the questions I asked myself in step 2. Now, those questions may have taken 13 seconds to answer, or they may have taken 13 months, right? It depends on the evolution of your urgency. So creating a vision for change. So, you first start thinking about change. Oh, I would like to hire somebody like this. It would be amazing if they did that. It's time to dream big when you create your vision. Like, just let it go. Just no restrictions. And then take all those ideas that you come up with and try and pare them down to reality, right? So, and again, I think for any workplace, we want the absolute best person that's going to do amazing things, but we need to understand in our mind what those amazing things would be. So that's really what we're doing when we create the vision for change. And understand, like, this will help them understand what we're asking them to do when they actually show up. So we can talk about the values that are central to change. So in our organization, I say for our values, we are capable, we're a great team, we'll look for great team members, we can train people, we hire for attitude first. These are all values when we go looking to hire someone. And trying to keep those positive values is, well, we're not going to accept people that don't fit with these values, right? That's our vision for change. Because if we do, we're not going to get there. Did I just freeze like that?
You are frozen, but we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. It's a constant sense of drama, so we're good.
Perfect. And does my screen move forward as well, but just I'm frozen?
Yeah, just you.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, what if I do this?
Nope.
No, okay.
I'm taking a photo. Just don't move.
No, you stop that. Okay. See if I'll turn this video back on. Is that better? Develop a short summary. So, 1 or 2 sentences. This doesn't need to be a novel, but what do we see when we hire this person? Right? So when we're hiring this person, what do we see? And not necessarily the blue hair, but how do we see them integrating to our team and contributing to our team? So what's the strategy? So who will do what by when? That's the hardest part, is committing that, but definitely you want to know that. Does your change coalition, are they all on board with this vision? Yes, hopefully. And then, I practice my vision speech often, but, when I look at a resume, I'm going to be looking for someone that is capable, that we can train, that has the right attitude. So all of those things, and recognize that we are all still in a mourning period because of the change, right? So whether we are mourning the loss of a person, or whether we are mourning the loss of, we were only 2 people and now we'll be 3. And what if that 3rd person doesn't fit in with us? And they're still mourning to that because there's anxiety. So we're still worried about how this fit will work. So now the screen doesn't work. Interesting. I should have stayed off the video, and there we go. Okay. Communicating the vision. So your message about change has strong competition all day long in your business, in your organization. There are so many other things to talk about and communicate that when we say, wouldn't it be nice if, we don't have time for that. We don't have time to make that change, right? So how do we communicate the vision frequently and powerfully so that it gets embedded? Because if we keep saying, wouldn't it be nice if, those things rarely change. That was the conversation we were having in 2015, 2012. But we hadn't embedded it, right? Because it was just oh, this is something to think about. Yeah, well, I have 100 other things to think about in my workplace each day. So I'm fairly certain you all do as well. So you want to make sure that you definitely communicate, someone is leaving, or we are growing, or, this has to take precedence because this is going to be very important to the future of our organization. And talk about it. I feel like we talked about our building a very, very lot. And I feel like we did it justice when we left it. We sold it to someone who wants to look after it as a historic place and leave our raven and all of those things. But, you know, you also have to walk the talk with it, right? So demonstrate the kind of behavior that you want from others. And I know that is very commonly said, less commonly done, but you know, who do we want to be surrounded with each day? That should be part of our vision as well. So talk about it, don't shy away from the change, which is, you know, something I'm still working on in my change management practitioner life. Address people's concerns and anxiety openly and honestly. So you have to answer the what ifs. What if we hire someone and they don't fit? Then we will help them move along on their career journey. That will be the answer, right? So, and that will reduce the anxiety. Okay, so if it doesn't work out, we can move on. Like, you know, if we don't hire well in the first place, we can move on and they can move on and it will be okay. Okay, so that's going to reduce anxieties, and the communicating that will also help reduce your workplace stress. Apply your vision to all aspects of operations. So, you know, from training to performance reviews, tie everything back to the vision. So when I talk about hiring, when I do performance reviews with my team, we talk about their goals and how they would like to support other members of the team. So if there's a change in the team, I can actually go back to their performance reviews and say, well, you said in your last performance review that you might like to take on this task and support this position. Is that still true? Is that still something you would be willing to do? So there's an opportunity to change some of the other job descriptions that we may have in order to fulfill that. So that's helpful as well when we communicate. This person will not do this any longer. Would you like to do it? Sometimes there's an opportunity for growth in your team because your new person may not be the same, doing the same position as a previous employee. And then leading by example. So, you know, we're in the middle of it. We have to figure out how we're hiring. So I'm in step 4 right now. Well, maybe a little bit of step 5. So removing obstacles. So again, hopefully your staff wants, you know, sometimes people resist the change. Sometimes it's the process. Maybe you need approval from here or approval from there. That can get frustrating. And you want to try and figure out how to remove those obstacles. You have to always be checking for what barriers there are to you getting the change that you've set out to accomplish. And sometimes having people remove those obstacles can make them feel very empowered. But you have to also be fairly quick about removing barriers, because if they sit in front of the barrier wall too long, it gets very anxiety building once again. So identify or hire change leaders whose main roles are to deliver the change. So sometimes you're not the change leader when it comes to hiring. Maybe you need HR advice. Maybe you need an HR professional. That could be something that could be part of your vision. You can look at your organizational structure, your job descriptions, your performance reviews, compensation, to make sure they're in line with your vision. So, you know, if I have a vision of needing to hire someone with very specialized training, and, you know, there's only 3 of these magical unicorns in the world, but I'm only going to pay them $4 an hour, then more than likely I have an obstacle, right? So I want to make sure that those things are in line with my vision. I want to recognize and reward people for making change happen, because they're going to help me remove obstacles as well. And I need to identify people who resist change and help them see what's needed. So, you know, not everybody's going to like it if they have to now share an office because you hired someone new, or not everyone's going to like it if, you know, they used to work with someone and that person has moved on and they don't want to make a new friend. So all of these things will get in your way in step 5. And then short-term wins. So we're looking for those quick wins. We're back to, you know, getting some Facebook money and some short-term targets. So, you know, maybe not just one long-term goal, but short-term, in the first 2 months, we're going to do this with this, in the first 3 months, this is going to happen. And, we all get to these 3-month review periods or probation periods, but, did we know when we were hired what we needed to do in those 3 months to make it through to 4 months? Or do we just think, don't really mess up and maybe they'll keep me, and you wait till like the day before your 3-month and you're waiting to find out? So with change management, you're going to have those goals a little more outlined, because you're going to fill it out in step 6 to say, in 1 month, we're going to expect this, in 2 months, we're going to expect this, in 3 months, we're going to expect this. And this might be a word, like we're going to expect friendliness. So we're going to expect they can do X, Y, like they don't have to be complicated short-term goals. So I don't want you to get afraid of when I say you have to write it down, because everybody then panics that they have to write a novel. This is a 1-page, 1 through 8 step, all your goals on 1 sheet process, I promise. So look for surefire projects. So when we're hiring, so we were just talking about this yesterday. I need when we get award nominations for Nova Awards, we ring a bell. So I was saying yesterday that if we get a resume, I should have a bell to ring the bell, because that's a team experience of, okay, the change is happening, right? So maybe we'll, I'll start a counter on the Teams thread or something like that. But there are ways to involve your team to show them that, hey, look, this hiring process is going well. We're going to be okay, right? Don't choose early targets that are too expensive, because you don't want to invest too much, just the right amount. You want to be able to justify your investment. But, you can talk about how many times your postings have been shared. You can talk about, wow, those were great interviews we had today, or those types of things. So those can be early targets when it comes to hiring. Look at the pros and cons. You want to make sure that you, what if we don't get any resumes, right? If you're hiring and you don't get any resumes, then what happens? What if you get too many? How do you sort through them? So, I know a lot of people that put up a posting and they don't have a rubric or a grading system to say what changes from the in pile to the out pile, like where's the line of who we will interview and we won't interview, or we just look at everybody and go, these ones seem okay. So having those short-term goals ahead of time, so you can celebrate the wins of, okay, we have 6 legitimate resumes that are like matching our skills. Yay. I think that's very important. And, reward people who help you meet those targets. So, saying thank you. I appreciated yesterday, Noella shared my job posting, and I said on her Facebook, thank you, Noella, for sharing my job posting. Because, that's part of my step process in hiring, is to reward the people that are going to help me meet my targets. So, you ask people to share your posting and then you thank them for doing so. That's actually part of the change management of hiring that we're using currently as well. And then build on the change. So, my friend Cotter argues that many change projects fail because victories declared way too early. Real changes takes longer, runs deep. You can get some quick wins, but is that the final win? No, I think anybody that runs marathon races will tell you you feel really good after a certain mile, and you still have to build all those miles together to get to the end. And then create a system that can be replicated each time. So standard operating procedure, please update those. Where you post, how you post, what your interview questions will be. Every time you have an opportunity to hire, you need to go through all of these systems again to make sure that you are prepared, and next time will be easier if you continue these things and continue to upgrade them each time that you do them. And every success provides an opportunity to build on what went wrong or what went right and what went wrong. And, as we go through every step, we are marking that down of this went right, this went wrong, check on this. So the 8 steps really just help keep you on track of whatever change project you're looking at. So, we are setting goals. We've looked at Kaizen. We are watching what others do in the HR space, like how are people attracting clients? Do they use Indeed? So we're going to look at all of that. And when we actually get to the point of hiring a candidate, do we ask them why they chose us and how our process could have been better? So, I hear hiring commentary often from potential employees of other organizations, and they did this and they did that. Did you tell them? Because I would want to implement those in my change management process for hiring in the future. Anchoring the changes in corporate culture. So again, I am not as good at steps 6, 7, and 8. I tend to move on, right? I get a little bit distracted. So really focusing on 6, 7, and 8 are important to me, and making sure that things stick. So we need to get to this. And this is where the people get happy again anyway. This is where you will find people are more relieved. And that's really what you want to get to. So talk about the progress every chance you get, tell success stories, use staff meetings. I'll use board meetings. I'm going to try and make sure that everybody knows how we're doing on our change journey. Include our values, that we are a great team. We hire great people. When hiring and training the new staff, we want someone that's going to believe that when we tell them that they're going to be great. We are going to publicly recognize the people that helped us be part of our original change coalition. So, that and making sure that people don't get lost. So that's also in all of our succession plan. How do we hire? If somebody is really good at change and they're going to leave, how do we make sure that in their succession plan, there's going to be that same change innovation? So we need to write it down. We need to say, managing change is also a part of this position. So in my own job description, there is now a line around managing change, that more than one, but that will be for my successor when I leave. Is like, this can't be denied. You will have to manage change as the CAO of this organization. So making sure that it's entrenched in your documents so that, when the next me is going to be hired, that they will also have a document that says, and hopefully you'll be better accepting change and managing it. So now it's up to you as the change masters. I've given you my kind of both my examples of how I use change management in a physical thing with our building, as well as how I would use it organizationally with hiring. But really, it's about the people. So I had to spend some time looking at myself as well. So do I have the ability as a change master to make other people feel important? Do I promote that vision? Do I do unto others as am I sharing Noella's position postings as well? That, am I helping others? Am I willing to admit my mistakes? Praise in public? Am I approachable enough for my team to tell me when we need change, or for our volunteers to tell me when we need change? And am I setting goals? So those were all things that I had to ask myself. And then I've also had to develop a bit of a work plan to boost myself in areas where I feel like I may not be doing a great job. But by going through each of the 8 steps with my changes, I also find that I get better in some of these things, because the steps remind me as a scientific method to actually do some of these things. So I'm getting points on praising in public for thanking Noella for letting me thank her yesterday for sharing the posting. So there we go. And everybody's afraid of change because what if I fail? Well, we're all going to fail sometimes. That's how we learn. So sometimes we fail because we didn't use the proper tools. Sometimes something, is very time consuming, or but you could be using the wrong tools. So there's plenty of resources. I'm not gonna Google them all for you, but you can use, all kinds of, whatever your workplace is, you can use all kinds of resources to support you, whether it's using Zoom, or maybe you don't need to go physically to every meeting. Maybe you just come to Zoom meetings. This allows us to reach our region and other parts of our province. So to me, this is wonderful to be able to spread our story to folks that would never ever hear that. So is it a fail? I don't know. Lack of commitment. So maybe somebody doesn't like transformational change. Maybe it's you. So sometimes you have to remind yourself. I go back to my 7 traits and I try and remind myself of, doing a good job in those 7 traits. But you can be part of the problem too, or an employee could be part of the problem, or a volunteer could be part of the problem, depending on what your organization workplace looks like. But definitely leading by example helps others with trust in those new initiatives, right? So I have a conversation with my team and with my volunteers often about, yes, I understand, I appreciate your trust. I know it's me, but when it's not me, what will the change management steps look like, right? So if someone that wasn't me came to you and said, let's do this, what would your response be? So that's part of they have a commitment to my management change style, but maybe another person would fail because they wouldn't have the same commitment. So we want to make sure that we're not set up for that failure. And then sometimes the opposite, we're overconfident. Let's just get this done. So sometimes that makes us take a little bit too much of a risk. Or we get too much, we didn't do any research or planning. So, and sometimes that causes problems as well in your change. And it's okay to go back to your vision. Go back to step 3, recreate the vision. It's okay to move around in those steps. I want to give you full permission to do that, because when I first started implementing this, it was like, no, it must go in this order. But sometimes I needed to dip down into number 7 and get some wins in order to make sure number 5 was going to happen. So you can move around. You just want to make sure you've done the work in each of the steps by the time that you consider the change to be implemented. And, good luck. So Senge, who is another change management practitioner or scientist, says that your mental health is only as good as your ability to accept and make change. So I can personally attest that after understanding a practice of how to work through changes and all the steps that are fairly simple, but if done, make me feel better about the changes that we've made. And I'm much more mentally accepting of the way things are and the things that I absolutely cannot change. So I will say that understanding the change has definitely helped with my own mental health and getting me to this side of all of those changes. And I don't think we're done yet. So we said we talk a little bit about anxiety. I've talked about it throughout the presentation, but there is an actual fear of change. People own this. It's like being afraid of a spider. It has a name, and I'm not going to try and say this because you can practice at home for your own entertainment. But there is an actual anxiety disorder. So, some of your staff, your teammates, your colleagues may not be identifying as that they have this anxiety disorder. They may not even know. I would argue that all of us have a little bit of this regardless. I mean, we all get anxious about different things, but it's a very common phobia. It's a really true thing, and they don't do well adapting to new situations, and they actually feel overwhelmed. So I would suggest that most of us, if you walk into a crowded room, you have a little touch of this, pop in, a little bit of, oh, I was just in my car talking on my phone. Now I have to walk in here and talk to all these people. Oh my goodness. Okay, I got to change my mindset. But if you don't have the ability to change your mindset that quickly, then you're going to find yourself very overwhelmed. So you need to understand when you're making any changes in your workplace that this is very real and it does exist, and there are different ways to address it. So how I suggest building anxiety reducing activities into your change management plan. A couple of things is in any of your steps. So you take your steps 1 through 8, or depending on the system that you plan to use. If you don't plan to use Cotter and you plan to use, Lewin instead, okay. But you need to infuse these things to reduce anxieties, which just reduces workplace stress, and it's going to reduce your stress as well, I promise. So some control or involvement. You've all met Liz now. So, Liz was a fairly new employee who got a lot of control and a lot of involvement pretty quickly. And, she carries that on in her day-to-day duties now. So I think that has done nothing but help Liz not have anxiety about whether she can be in control of the physical space. She absolutely owns it. So definitely some sort of control or some sort of involvement in whichever way that they can be, especially your late adopters like me. You want to make sure that they do have. So think of how I would have felt being a late adopter to the idea, as well as having no control. So I was in the enviable position of having all of the control. Well, not quite all of the control. The board had a bit of control with budgets and things like that, but of the control, and I had to give it away. I had to share that with other people. So I would have struggled much more through the change of our building sale if I had not had control or involvement in that, for sure. If I would have just been told this is how it's going to happen, and that's what happens to people every day in the workplace. They're just told, this is how we do it now, right? So let's try and give people a little bit of control or involvement in the change. Can we start with a few little small changes first? So, we started in the basement, right? We got rid of things in the basement first, where we didn't really work, or where we didn't really see it, wouldn't impact our day-to-day. So small changes first, so less anxiety, because the minute they started coming into my office and taking away the bookcase it's like, whoa, what's happening here, right? So small changes first. And every large change has a number of small changes that have to happen. So let's try and get to those first, and there will be less anxiety. We need to discuss the value of the employee in the change. It's very important that they understand that they are going to be valued throughout this process. So, this is for all of us. This is why we're doing this. Here's how this will impact you. Would you like to pick your office? Would you like, so really you want to reduce people's anxiety by letting them understand what the value is and how this is going to make their life better on the other side of the change. The speed. So some people like things really quick. Some people like things really slow. Some changes need to happen very quickly. You need to make a decision now. Some changes need to happen over time. So pick the speed that is going to be most comfortable for people, and check in with them on whether the speed is okay. And I know this sounds like a whole lot of, babysitting, but it's not. It's good change management, as well as it is, thoughtful as a change leader. So we want to make sure that are you on board with this? Are you still on board with this? Are we okay with this? And then creating those opportunities for discussion. Where are we going to talk about it? How often are we going to talk about the change? Can we talk about it every day? Some people will need to talk about it and some people won't. So what would the opportunities for discussion about whatever the change is going to be? Where should we talk? How do we give you feedback? Right? So we need to communicate that to people, and that again will reduce their anxiety, because they know they can, if you need to text me and tell me your thoughts. Okay. Right. And then celebrations and course corrections. Celebrations reduce anxiety because we see that we're progressing, and course corrections reduce anxiety because very often if the team feels like we're not going in a right direction on any kind of change, but all of a sudden, oh, we're going to move this over here a little bit, then they're like, okay, they are watching, right? Because the worst thought is, you think of you're following somebody on the highway and you see them drift off, and they're drifting off towards the ditch, and you go, oh my goodness, what's happening? Are they on their cell phone? Are they having a hard time? Like, are they going to hit the snowbank? What's, and then all of a sudden you see the course correction come back and you feel, oh, okay, they're going to be fine, right? So we're anxious for them as they're drifting off, but when they come back, we feel better. So, you know, I liken a lot of change management to driving a car. So you do want to see those course corrections to reduce anxiety. And that is the end of today's session, pretty much right on time, but I did leave a few minutes for some questions. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer those. I'm sure you all came for a reason. And or if you want to workshop a change idea, we can, you know, if you have a change that you're thinking of, we could run it through the 8 steps if you want an idea of what some of those 8 steps could be, or you can, you know, send me an email or find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. So thanks for your time.
I have a question.
Excellent.
I'm curious to see if you have any courses that you would suggest to do for new management. The APMG, I had seen it earlier in the call. Is there any other courses that you would suggest?
That is the certification that I did. So I did I did 2 pieces with that. I did the foundations as well as the practitioner. But I mean, there are like once you find a change management style or practice that you like, again, I picked Cotter just because I related to the 8 steps and I could see in my mind how that worked. But I mean, you can go online and find a number or contact North, or I'm not sure, you know, the local colleges probably. I know there is the Ontario management diploma that you can do as well through probably Northern College and College Boreal. So, I mean, I just do some online investigation of what resources are available to you in your area. But if you definitely are looking for, you know, more on change management, for certification, then you're probably going to have to do one of these larger online. I know Canadore College has a change management program as well that you can do online. So, and I see a hand is raised. Yes, Joel.
Hi, Keitha. It was a great presentation. You packed a lot of info into the hour and a half here, so I really appreciate that. Lots of food for thought. I'm wondering, I'm not sure if this is a fair question, but and if it's not, if it's too big, then just let me know. What stands out as, in your experience and your learning, as the 1 or 2 kind of main resistance or obstacle pieces that you could pretty well expect when you're moving towards a significant change plan idea, that kind of thing? What really, you know, stands out as you're pretty well guaranteed you're going to be faced with this, and you know, this is my suggestion or some suggestions on how to tackle that. I know you planted a lot of that in your presentation, but just kind of in a few words, is there anything that stands out like that in particular?
Well, you know, of course, we were divesting a beautiful community asset, and I mean, I knew that there was going to be some community resistance to that change. And again, I work at the leisure of the board, so the board really would have to deal with that community resistance. But I didn't want to disappoint my community. I mean, I spent you know, 24 years at that point, looking after this building that our organization had fought so hard for. So I think there's always going to be resistance from outside groups. And and inside groups, and you need to identify ahead of time how you may deal with that resistance. So for us, we knew that the community may have some resistance, but that, was that going to be what guided our vision? So we had to believe and we had to know that we were doing the right thing for our organization as well as our community, regardless of maybe what the community chatter would be or the community resistance would be as people who were actually not using the building, right? So we had to look at if we had more information than they did. So, but I mean, as far as, guaranteed, there's always going to be anxiety, regardless of it's yourself or if it's about, the money you will spend, the money you will save maybe with some change management. But you're definitely always going to have anxiety and you're always going to have resistance. Those are guaranteed. And then communication breakdown. They're not hearing what you're saying, which means you may need to do a course correction of how you're communicating it because your vision is not being heard or not being understood the way you intend it. And that's not necessarily on the receiver, that's on you as the communicator. You may have to go back and revisit that. So that's kind of my point. Never be afraid to go back and course correct because, we had a message of why we needed to sell this building and how we plan to move on as an organization, but some of that got lost along the way. We had to go back and say, yes, but now we're able to do this and this for our community and this for our members. And so we really had to focus on that. So you can be guaranteed as you go through the 8 steps that you're going to find, or you're going to have to think about the things that are going to always show up.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions, thoughts, concerns?
Noella has her hand up.
Oh, hello,
I don't
Ms.
know who
Miller.
can see me. Hi. 2 things. One was the first one, which was that sense of urgency. I was a bit surprised by that one. I thought it would be a timeline should be placed for sure, but I kind of understand the sense of urgency from a selling point. It does get you, there are certain ones of us that work better when we have that deadline. Is that the thought process when you're looking at that? Does that sense of urgency in the making the decisions?
Well, I guess the sense of urgency is more like you don't really have a change until you figure out you need a change, right? So you can't put a timeline to a change that you don't know needs to happen. And sometimes it's the sense of urgency that will create the change, right? So for us, it was like all of a sudden the market was good to sell a commercial building. Well, all of a sudden this discussion became very important, right? So we had to make a decision because those external factors were really pressuring us to say it's the right time.
Yeah. And I guess the other, that's right. So, and I guess the other one is that conversation with your team about what would happen if this change is not a good idea. And when you get to that point, you go, shoot, that was the wrong mistake. What would happen? How do you correct it? And I guess kind of in your own head also, and with your teams, if it doesn't work, here's what's going to happen. And then there's that conversation of what if it really works well? How is that going to affect me? Like now, do we have new responsibilities if this takes off or it works? So I would add that in my own head on those lists. I thought the list was very good. It kind of guides you through it, but I would definitely know that conversation would have to take place for myself. What's the worst scenario if this is the wrong decision? And what's the worst scenario if this is the right decision? So yeah, it's something, it was good because it kind of gives you that guideline to kind of, for those people that have that anxiety, including yourself. So yeah. Good.
Yeah, no, I mean, you
Great.
need to get through creating your scenarios of what ifs, good and bad, right? Like if this really works, oh my goodness, what if 50 members a day wanted to use our new boardroom, we wouldn't be able to accommodate that, right? So, I mean, those would be amazing things that could happen, but you do have to have that conversation during your change management steps for sure. Yeah. Just to have it in your mind. Yeah. Yeah. So you can respond more quickly.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
That was great. It was great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Amy asks which books you recommend. Amy, I believe that's probably related to management style. And what I might say is Change Manager's Handbook, which we'll share in the recording email. and follow up as well.
As you can see, it's very well tabbed. I use it all the time. I have all of my projects that I'm currently working on in here. Yeah, I mean, I can, you know, Liz, you know, if I want change, I often talk to Liz. So, but you know, we have a postage machine and we're like, sense of urgency. We don't mail things as much as we used to. And this costs us a lot of money each year to have a postage machine. How do we not have a postage machine? So that was a question I posed to Liz on Monday, and now we've started the steps, right? So we're going to get rid of that postage machine, but all of those steps have to happen. So, so it's on the list, but yes. Because it is a bit of a science, and I'm not a scientist. There are scientists that study change management for sure, but it's you know, it's making sure you close the loop. Really, those 8 steps will lead you that way. So yes, the Change Manager's Handbook. I would recommend anything written by John Cotter is going to help. I mentioned some books earlier. You know, on my Iceberg and Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. You know, there's some great easy change management books. And I think for me, what was confusing all the time at the beginning of my journey was I thought this had to be a lot more complicated than it was, but it was really about committing to the steps and asking the questions through each of the steps and, you know, adjusting my timelines accordingly. So sometimes I wasn't very good at that part, but getting through steps 5, 6, 7, and 8, or 6, 7, and 8 for me. Sometimes, you know, you get distracted and you want to move on to the next thing. So this list has really helped keep me on task for making any change. So we're going to get rid of the postage machine next. Anything else? I can't see. I
think we've gone through the chat box, and that seems to
perfect.
clear that up. And of course, you know, Keitha's contact information is there, so you're welcome to reach out to her. I can attest that as somebody who is an anomaly to manage, that Keitha applies these principles very well. And
you're often on my list of 6, 7, and 8. Yes.
And I would say that instead of who moved my cheese, who ate my ginger snaps, but
Correct.
we'll talk about that later. So Keitha, thank you so much. I think you know, as Joel had said, you certainly packed a lot of information in here, and so I think we're very grateful, and I have no doubt that some people will be identifying new ways to incorporate new management components into their workplaces as well. So thank you very much. And I just wanted to thank everybody else for attending as well. Please follow up, do subscribe to our Reimagine Resiliency newsletter. We share all sorts of resources and information on the 5 work pillars that we have within that program. And then beyond that, I just want to say a special thank you to the Far Northeast Training Board for their support of the workforce development pillar as well. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, grants, funding information, or any sort of business related, you can always contact the Chamber. And you also have the partners here at the TEBC. So with that, I wish everybody an excellent day. Stay safe and be kind to one another. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.